You are listening to Lender Lounge with Kevin Kim, a podcast dedicated to helping those in the private lending industry grow, improve, and streamline their business. I'm Kevin Kim, partner at Gerasi LLP, the nation's largest private lending law firm. Join me as we chat with the best and brightest in private lending, who are eager to share their years of wisdom and best practices with lenders, borrowers, brokers, investors, and more. Subscribe to Lender Lounge on your favorite podcast platform and learn more about Gerasi and how we can work with you at gerasilawfirm.com. Check out the episode summary for other valuable resources. Hey guys, we are live and in person. I love doing these episodes. Nema and I have flown up to Sacramento for another episode of Lender Lounge with Kevin Kim. Today, we are interviewing one of our oldest clients, a man I consider a friend. And before I introduce you, why don't you introduce yourself to our audience and we'll get started.
Sure. Thank you, Kevin. My name is Adham Sbeih, and I am the CEO of Socotra Capital.
Now, today our audience may notice that I've got another person here with me. You all know him very well. My partner in crime, Nema. He's our special guest host today because when he found out that we were going to come interview Adam, he's like, no. You don't get to do this alone. And he wanted to join me. So I'm really happy that you joined us because we've got a lot to talk about today because Adam, you guys have been a client of Gerasi for, I don't even know what.
I think in 2008, early.
Before my time, right around your time? Before your time.
My first summer with the law firm.
Yeah. Right. So we've got a lot to talk about. And
We do.
I would like us to start with just tell our audience, what kind of company is Socotra? What do you guys do? I guess, how big are you guys? That kind of stuff.
Sure. Socotra Capital, we're a hard money lender. We make equity-based loans. Really, we've got, in total, I think we're around 33 people, close to $500 million in capital between 4 funds. We've got a couple different products. We do the ground-up construction with our Herzer team, our Herzer Financial team. We do the turbo close, which is, hey, I need $5 million and I need it in 5 days. We do that with Socotra. We do the bank buster. Yeah, we're a traditional private money lender in this space.
You guys have been in business since 2007.
Correct.
So you opened doors during the recession, like at the outset of the recession. And so how right now, when our audience here is private money lender, they're probably thinking, resi, fix and flip. That's kind of what they're thinking. But that's not really what you're concentrating on these days, or?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do probably, I'd say it's about 70% is in the commercial real estate space. So that can be, owner-user kind of product, or it can be industrial and retail are our 2 big asset classes that we make loans in, really.
That's great. And then let's wind the clock back. The point of the podcast really is just to interview our friends and clients in this space and learn more about how they grew their business and brand, because you have one of my favorite stories. I'm so happy that I came here in person because we got to see your team, and I know they've been around with you for a long time. I got to see your company wall here, and I just love visiting clients' offices, but especially this one because I know how much history is involved here. So why don't you give us a little bit of a wind the clock back?
Sure.
Much younger Adam.
Right.
7.
Right.
The man also doesn't age, to be fair.
He doesn't age. He does not.
Okay.
He really does. Yeah.
Sure, I could talk. Yeah, so in 2007, I was a commercial banker, and I had a really good client. I'd financed probably 10, 12 buildings for him in the previous 4 or 5 years, and he'd built a headquarters here in Sacramento, and we did the construction financing for him. And when it came time for the takeout, our bank would not give him the permanent financing. So this guy was, he owned, I'm guessing somewhere close to 20 Coldwell Banker offices. So he was a huge, he had a lot of Coldwell Banker franchises. And the writing was on the wall that the residential real estate market was about to crash. And so our bank wouldn't give him the permanent financing. And then in the banking world, you know all the other bankers in town, and no one in town would provide that permanent debt.
That's all here in Sacramento?
Here in Sacramento,
okay.
Yeah. So, I started, and this client, he'd become a friend of mine, and he said, "Hey, you got me into this deal. Figure a way out," And so I said, "Okay." So, and at the time I was, in my, I guess I must have been mid-30s, early 30s. And so I made a list of like, hey, who do I know with money? And it was about a $2 million loan, construction loan. And he'd put, his heart and soul into this thing. It was probably $6 million in value. So, he overbuilt it. He way overbuilt it. But it was going to be his headquarters for all these franchises. So anyway, so I made a list of people I knew with money. And of course, that's a pretty short list when you're 33, 34 years old. And started calling all those folks, and no one would provide the money. But I kept asking, who do you know that would have this kind of capital? And eventually I got referred to Glenn Golden.
Oh, okay. Glenn.
And so Glenn flew in on his little Cessna, and I picked him up from the airport. We drove out to the building.
Okay.
I introduced him to the borrower. He walked the building, and he reached out his hand. He goes, "All right, 9.5%, 5-year deal."
Wow, handshake and everything.
And this is 07.
Yeah.
And that was it. And I thought, you know what? So Reprop made the loan, and I thought, you know what? I want to be that guy flying in on the Cessna making the deal.
Okay.
And so
that made an impression on you. That
a huge impression. Yeah, huge impression.
Is Glenn aware that he is the start of your career?
I'm not sure. I told him, but I don't know that it really hit him. I don't know that it really
we'll
hit
see
him.
him in about a week or so.
Yeah, we'll see him next week.
Glenn Golden.
Yeah. The other person that had an impact on me, was Uncle Chuck, too, because I'd met Uncle Chuck, and I didn't quite understand what Uncle Chuck did. This was probably in maybe 05 or 06.
When you're a banker, right?
Yeah, when I was a banker.
That's a foreign concept if you're a banker. Yeah.
I didn't quite really understand it. But he also made an impression on me for sure.
Very
he was
cool.
probably my introduction to, hey, hard money was Uncle Chuck.
So you just like what started right there?
So I thought, well, this is probably going to become an issue going forward. There's going to be a banking crisis. And I worked at a bank at the time that was run by a local guy here, that one of the few billionaires in Sacramento. And he was like the Henry Ford of the concrete tilt-up building. He'd done really well building concrete tilt-ups for, 60 years. He was like in his late 80s, early 90s at this point. And he was saying, oh, yeah, the real estate market's going to crash. Banking is, even as much as he owned this bank that I worked for, he was like, yeah, the banking industry is in for some hurt. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to give this thing a shot. Yeah. So about 3 months later, I started Sbeih Financial.
Sbeih Financial.
Sbeih Financial.
Yeah. That was the original iteration.
Yes,
okay.
yes.
Very creative.
Yes.
Wait. Okay. So this is 2007. You realize you do no more future in banking. You open the shop. This is you by yourself.
Correct.
And are you just brokering? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah. So I had sold my personal home in 05 on Buzz's recommendation. The person who owned our bank.
Okay.
He said, oh yeah, real estate's going to take a crash. And so I sold my house, and my mom, I remember to this day, my mom cried because she said, hey, you will never be able to afford another house for the rest of your life. So it was one of those things. I'd bought the house for say like roughly $140,000 in 99 or 2000. And I sold it for like $350,000. Yeah. Right. Those were the days. Right. So I was sitting on about $200,000. So the first couple loans I made with my own money, just trying to figure out how to do it. And then about 4 or 5 months later, and I had a couple broker deals I did too. And then 4 or 5 months later, I talked to John and I said, hey, let's go grab some pizza. And we grabbed pizza and had a couple pitchers of beer, and on a cocktail napkin, I kind of sketched out, hey, this is what hard money is. This is how it works. And he's like, and at that time, he was a commercial real estate broker.
Okay.
And doing leasing and sales.
So for our audience who are unaware of the Socotra story, this is John Ingoglia. All right. Rest in peace, John Ingoglia. We miss you so much. And this is a crazy story because literally John had no business doing private lending. Like he had been doing just fine.
Right.
So how did you two get together? What was the connection between the two of you? Like, was there a friendship before this?
We did, so John and I met. I organized a commercial real estate broker softball league when I was doing commercial banking. So it was like a slow pitch beer league kind of a deal. And John and I both were terrible. John struck out the first week of the first season. So we're still running that softball league to this day, 19 years later.
Nice.
Yeah. And we raise a lot of money for charity.
That's awesome.
Every strikeout's $25 to charity.
Oh,
and
that's
then
nice.
So if you strike out, you got to pay?
You got to pay.
Oh,
yeah,
I
it
like
goes to the
that.
children's home. Yeah,
I like that.
And we've raised over the years, it's close to $200,000.
Oh, that's amazing.
Fantastic.
To the children's home. So anyway, so I knew John from the softball league, and I knew he had been a stockbroker in New York. And so I said, hey, let's try. He said, oh, well, I can raise the money. You just get the deals. I was like, okay, perfect. He grew into an extremely successful, the most, how would I describe him? He was the quintessential salesperson.
Energetic.
The ultimate salesman.
Always selling.
Yes, always closing.
Yeah.
He was a phenom.
Yeah.
I love him to death. Anyway, but he was a little rusty at that point. So we started and we started out, and he had a spare bedroom in his house, so we were working out of that bedroom. And then his family owned a large food distribution business here in Sacramento.
The salamis.
The salamis, exactly. So it was called, Tony's Salami and Cheese at one point. That was the name of the company. It was eventually it grew to Tony's Fine Foods. Anyway, so they had a warehouse that they weren't using, and they'd used it for processing tomatoes. That was their prior use, but they hadn't used it in a couple of years. So they said, oh, yeah, you guys can take the warehouse. So John and I, we went and cleaned out there was all the mosquito larvae and all the bugs and stuff from doing the tomato processing and then closing up the building for like 5 years. So we cleaned all that stuff up, set up a couple desks, and went to work.
And started finding deals and investors?
So we just started, John being a stockbroker from New York, he knew how to use the phone, and that was kind of, I also, to get the company started, my first 50 dials trying to find $2 million, right? That was, so it was just like, hey, so we just made lists and we just dialed every day, all day. That's how we started. It was tough raising money back then, really, really tough. Say like, I remember the week when, Lehman Brothers collapsed and WAMU failed. That was all, I think, what was that? Maybe October of 2008, September of 2008.
What was the pitch? Like, when you're calling these people and saying, what were you saying to them?
Were you Socotra Capital at the time?
No, so that's interesting. Yeah, that's a good question. So, when John decided to join me, his last name was Ingolia. And so, those are two, terrible immigrant names.
Sbeih. That's tough. Yeah.
It's no Dom Pan.
Yeah. Stop. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, my pain. So we were like, okay, let's create a name and let's make something that's a little different. And there was a company back then. They've now gone out of business, but they were called Opus, and they were a real estate developer. And I thought, oh man, I love the name Opus. So what can we find that's like Opus? And we couldn't really figure out a name like that. So then we started looking at like islands, and there's an island called Socotra, and it's a property, an island that's a part of the Yemen Empire. And what we liked about it was it was a safe haven for merchants in the time of Marco Polo.
Okay.
So it was like, oh yeah, we're a safe haven.
I like that.
Yeah. And then in Sanskrit, Socotra means island of bliss.
Okay.
So it was like, there we go.
I love these stories. That's the meaning, right? Yeah.
So we changed it from Sbeih Financial to Socotra Capital. You do all the reincorporation and rename, all that other stuff. Sure. Added John to the corp, which obviously was worth nothing at the time, and that cost us like, I can't remember, $5-6 grand at the time. And then I don't know if you remember, during that time period, there were those Somali pirates that were attacking the cruise ships. So those Somali pirates, so all of a sudden Socotra was in the news because they were launching off of the island of Socotra.
Perfect timing.
I mean, no press, bad press is good.
So it's like, and I remember
Did you just
talking
start to
to,
go like, I am not the Somali pirate, but I would like to talk to you.
Or use it in your favor. Hey, we've been robbed. Please help. You know?
right. Yeah, we were at that point in our business where money was like so dear, and we're like, God damn, if do we want to spend like the $6,000 to try to rename the company something else? And so we just said, and we just ran with it. We're the island of bliss. We're the safe haven for merchants.
So back to Nema's question though.
What we would do, we'd call folks, we'd get lists from the title company of people that had seller carry, and then we would, and then John's mom. We call her our first employee. She would sit on the internet and do like reverse people search to try to find phone numbers. And we'd put them all into Excel spreadsheets. And then we would call those folks and say, hey, you've got a first trust deed or a second trust deed on this property that you sold. Are you looking to do something similar to get that kind of income on something else? That was how it started. And it was,
it's a very different way of pitching because like it's not what most of our clients, they were not that resourceful. I'll tell you that much because a lot of them had, they had a book of business they had brought over previously, or they had someone who they hired someone that had that book or something like that.
Right. They always had some sort of investment background where they knew high net worth individuals, and you were basically reverse engineering who could be a high net worth individual who understood this product type.
Right. That is what we did. So like I remember the first investor we ever got, and he's still invests with us to this day, was I met a guy at the McDonald's and he said, I'll put $50,000 into your deal. So, I remember the first deal John and I did together where we raised the money. It was $588,000 and it took us 9 weeks to raise the money. Yeah. And, of that money, my dad was $50,000. John's brother was 38. The guy from McDonald's was 50. It was 10, it was a fractional trust deed, 10 people.
Good old hard money. Yeah.
$588,000. Yeah.
I mean, comparatively now,
right. Right. So that was the start.
Yeah. And so like when you guys started out, was it just California only and just you two? And so I've always wondered for you guys, like, I know now you guys lend in many, many states across the country. You're primarily commercial driven, but like back then it was just whatever deal came across your desk and you just raised the money each deal by deal, right?
Yes, that's exactly what happened. We were a little more local, obviously. I had, the local roots. And, the banks really weren't lending, kind of a lot, not too far from what it's like today, right? Where the banks aren't making loans. So I did have a pretty good referral network of seeing loans, seeing opportunities.
From the bank and stuff like that.
Yeah. So we didn't have to spend a ton of time trying to prospect new loans. We spent a ton of energy on, raising the money, funding the cash.
And so like when you guys were growing, like when was like kind of like, okay, this is now starting to become... we're real now. We're big boys now. When did that kind of like when that first light come on for you?
I think for me that was probably 2010, towards the end of 2010. Okay. I remember there was a Christmas or December of 2010 where our phone was ringing off the hook with opportunities with loans, and John was like, let's get them all. And so, these were like 7-figure loans, which were really big for us at the time. Yeah. And so, I remember that December we closed like $5 million in loans. It was like me and John and a admin at the time.
Still very, very lean.
It's super lean. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I thought, okay, after that month, it was like, all right, this actually might work. It was
that was when you realized, we've got a thing.
We've got a thing.
I like that. Yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
My mom was wrong.
No, my mom wanted me to become a plumber. So just full disclosure.
I can't imagine you fixing toilets.
My folks didn't think real highly of me.
Right.
So I've noticed there are 3 types of people in the world for this podcast.
Right.
There are people who call Kevin and say, Kevin, I want to be on your podcast.
Yeah, very common.
There's the second camp, which is people who we call and say, hey, we'd like you to be on the podcast. So like, yeah, sounds great. Let's get set up. And there's the third camp, people we have to hunt down
Yeah.
mercilessly.
Which one am I?
You are deep third.
I remember I asked you when we first started, like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to, because I remember at the time it was like, you had said like, I think it was before the Herzer deal.
Right.
And like, you were like very concentrated on like the next evolution of growth. And like, you kind of didn't want to give away the secret sauce at all. Like, all right, you know? And I remember you telling us that in Vegas and I was like, okay, let's wait. So.
Well, and I think too is, I mean, we host conferences and all that kind of stuff, and we've asked you to speak many times, and you've rejected our offers many times, and so but I think that kind of I don't know if I call it mysteriousness, but
it's very mysterious.
But right, I mean, you're not the person who wants attention or spotlight, from what I have seen.
That would be correct.
You are very much behind the scenes. Walk us through that. I mean, walk us through kind of your thought process of what it means to be CEO and what it means to be at the helm of a company.
Sure. So, yeah, I mean, I think that being the CEO is different than being kind of in the forefront of the industry. So, as a CEO, I think of myself like say like a football coach, right? You might yell at the defensive lineman, you coddle the offensive lineman, and you meet privately with the quarterback, right? You do different things to different people under different situations to get the most out of them. And so, I take my role as a CEO at Socotra as, very serious, and that, I want to get the most out of my team. And which doesn't always mean like, I want to get the most publicity. I encourage our team members to do like conferences, speak at conferences and do that sort of thing, because, I think it's important, and, it gives them credibility. I don't need the credibility per se in order to be effective. I need the credibility within the building, right? I don't need it to the external world.
But at the same time, a lot of CEOs are also have that marketing brain. They want to promote the company to the industry at large. They believe that building brand reputation in the marketplace requires them as CEO to go to, I don't know, Western States Cref and be on panels, so all the brokers come to them. But I've thought about it for you. I know your business model, and I'm thinking about it. I'm like, you don't want brokers calling you Adham Sbeih, right? And that's a different thing. Like, you've built a business that's a little bit not intended to be fed to you.
Yeah,
right?
I don't want something, centered around me. I want it centered around my team. And we have a very team-oriented approach to everything we do. I prior to being a banker and a hard money lender, I was a bike racer, and I was really fortunate to be on some really high-performing teams.
Wait, bike racer, like a cyclist?
Like a cyclist,
okay.
yes.
You thought he was like a Hell's Angel, didn't you?
I know.
The story would have been a lot more fun. But
he's a man of mystery. You never know.
Unfortunately, he's just Lance Armstrong here, guys.
I mean, Adham is, every time I see Adham, I always learn something new about Adham. He's always a surprise, right? So I don't know. I knew this, but I wanted, just making sure.
Yes, no. So I was a professional bicycle racer, and I was on some really high performing teams. I was also on some, teams that were a little more dysfunctional and weren't high performing. The highest performing teams I've been a part of, the captain of the team was not like a person that won the most races. They were the person that enabled everyone else to win. In cycling, it takes a team to allow an individual to win. So it's a little bit of a foreign concept to people that don't understand the sport. But the teams that were the most effective and highest performing had captains that are willing to give, as opposed to, always looking to receive. They aren't the narcissists, right, in the group. So
there's a lot of Pippins and not a lot of Jordans.
Yes, there we go. And so, so when I run the business, I try to run it from that same perspective. One, it's a team sport. We do a lot as far as, team goals, team performance. There's also individual side to that, but right, there's a huge team component here at Socotra and Herzer. And me as the leader, I don't need to take the glory on the team wins.
How do you balance, because I know we've struggled with that, which is balancing individual performance and recognizing team and trying to make sure that you don't create a competitive environment between team members, but while still making sure that your people are being held accountable to standards.
Yeah, it's challenging. And it's something we struggle with just like you guys do, I'm sure. But, we try to create goals that are team oriented. And then there's individual accountability that goes with those team goals. So it's like, hey, what is your participation in achieving that goal for the team? And then each person has their own individual goals. So it's like, you got to kind of build it like it's like a pyramid, where you're kind of building for the peak. So yeah, it takes a lot of effort as the leader to find that. And you've got to, you can't improve what you don't measure. So you got to measure a lot of different metrics.
And that's exactly what I wanted to go to next, which is I have been able to talk with you at conferences for many years now. And I love sitting down with you because every time I sit down with you, you teach me so much about thinking about business. And so give us an idea of just some of the things that you track and why you chose to track those.
Oh, goodness. Okay. Yeah, sure. We track all sorts of things. So we track, for instance, when an internet lead comes in, how quickly do we call them back?
Oh, a time frame between.
Yes.
Wow.
How quickly do you respond to an internet lead? And there's data that says, hey, if you are responding within 4 minutes, your ability to close that lead is drastically higher. Beyond 4 minutes, the closing rate on that internet lead is significantly lower.
Because they called the next person
yes,
already.
because they're already onto the next website.
Right.
Exactly. So that's one thing that we track. We track the number of dials somebody makes. We track the number of opportunities that someone sees. We track the number of opportunities that get appraisals paid. And of the deals that get appraisals paid, how many close. And we track all sorts of ratios. How we have what we call a power hour. So we do a lot of dialing in our office. So there's a 2-hour time window. We track how much time are you actually talking to somebody on the telephone during that 2-hour time period. We track when we draw docs to, close a loan. We go through a review process. 3 people review it. We track how long it takes from the time the docs are created to the time the third person gets the review and the docs go out to title, right? Because we're in a speed game.
Right. Turbo close,
exactly. Yeah. We track so many different pieces of our business. And then, what it allows you to do is you can pull on different levers at different points. So, you can incentivize employees to say, hey, we want docs going out to title within 45 minutes. So like, hey, if we can draw the loan documents and get 3 people to review them for accuracy within 45 minutes and get them out to the title company, that gets some kind of bonus or, we gamify everything. So, there's some sort of, you get some kind of point for that.
And I got a question on that because we've known about your guys' business culture and how you guys have created this very retail, sales-oriented outfit when it comes to getting new origination in the door. It's very different than a lot of the businesses that we interview on the show, a lot of our private lending clients out there, because they're really looking at it from they're concentrating on meeting brokers to get repeat business, and they just they work on I would call it the relationship game, and they're out there they don't really do the call stuff anymore, right? That's kind of the sense that I get from a lot of people, that doesn't work for them. And it's some people,
especially nationally. I think that it's
especially
very hard to grow outside of your market.
And then adding commercial real estate finance to that makes it even more difficult. But you guys have made it work, and there's very few organizations that have made that work. It's been proven time and time again. Every retail business that sells to consumers and businesses does that, if you really think about it. But it requires a certain level of discipline and personality to be willing to make those types of phone calls, right?
Yeah, it does. It's a certain personality and it's a certain type of person. And we do really well with team-oriented folks, people that work well in a team environment. We do
recruit former athletes or
we absolutely do.
Yeah. What's the avatar for you when you're looking for a new hire on the origination side?
On the sales side?
Yeah, on the sales side.
It's typically a younger person. They typically played, college sport or were really good at something. They had some kind of really high proficiency because they're
competitive in nature.
Yes. And they're about to do something that when you start, it is very difficult. It gets easier as you get going. So, what I would say is that you do develop relationships with the people that you're calling. So, it is a long game. it's different than, and we do go to conferences and we do belly to belly and we do build relationships.
I like that, belly to belly. I like that.
But
that's a wrestling term. I like that. I like that. That's a real way to put it, though. I mean, when you're out there, you're
belly to belly, yeah,
and you're trying to get those deals done. I like that. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, we do that also. But the telephone, I mean, that's how I started. And that's how John, when he came, when we joined together, that's what we did.
Right.
And when we hired our first employee, that's what they did. And
Right.
it just has sort of grown
And
that
it
way.
works.
And it works, absolutely.
And there's
100%.
not a lot of I feel like a lot of organizations aren't willing to do it because it's hard to find people that are willing to do that. The cold calling game is very tough. It's very intimidating. And like finding the folks to do that. And
yes, it's a certain type of person. They've got to be competitive.
And I were walking your halls today when we got into this afternoon, and I was just thoroughly impressed because not only do you have these young men and women that are really hustling hard, but like they've got ties on. And this is, to me, I love it. I personally love it because I'm the guy that wants to wear like nice clothes to work. But
Kevin and I have a lot of friction in the office right now.
Nema wants to wear shorts to work every day, and I want to. I insist on at least wearing a collar. But like I used to wear ties to work every day, and like I walked in, and I'm like, everyone's got their A game on. They're wearing their tie, and then you guys had this like this ritual for your newest loan officer or a salesperson. Tell us more about like that part of the business, how like you're incentivizing and rewarding and creating that level of. It's like a team feeling, but it's almost like it was like it felt like he was getting a medal almost.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And tell us more about that and what you're doing.
I mean, I think in general, intrinsic rewards are as valuable and sometimes more valuable than the monetary reward. Part of doing the startup for us in the sales game is that there's a lot of benchmarks that you get to hit. So you're constantly climbing a ladder. So it's not like, hey, I'm 3 years going across the Sahara Desert. It's like every 1 to 3 months, you're hitting a new benchmark, accomplishing a new task.
And do they know this? I mean, when you start on day one, they're like, hey, in 3 months, you do this, you get this. And at 3 months, you do this, you get that.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it's celebrated because it's hard.
Yeah.
It's harder than hell. And, most people fail.
Yeah.
Most people fail. But
what's that turn like on the entry level guys?
It's, starting day one, it's probably in that 10% range.
They just can't cut it. I can't do this.
Yeah, but I'd say once you make 90 days, and you make it, then, that's probably you're getting up into that kind of 1 out of 3.
Right.
It becomes pretty obvious,
Right.
And sometimes folks make it and they decide, you know what, I don't want to do it. I mean,
they're not built for it.
No,
they don't have the personality for it. I get it.
They don't love what they're doing. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And you gotta love what you're doing.
And so I gotta ask, because for our audience that knows Socotra, you guys know that there are these characters out there who come to the conferences and they're wearing the hard money T-shirt,
right?
And we've got hard money Chris, we've got hard money Karate, we've got hard money Connor, Like, how did that start? Because it came out right when I felt like our industry was like, oh, hard money,
Right.
you know. I love it. I was at MBA in San Diego, and I saw Chris walking down the escalator. I was like,
because doesn't this feel kind of Narcos-ish? Like you're dealing with Adam, polished, wears a suit, nice man.
but then you have these guys.
He just have his banditos running out in the wild.
But I love it. I feel like they lean into it too, right? Because it's like
yeah, we wanted to lean into it. Yeah, 100%
wave the
right.
flag. We are hard money. But like, how did that start?
So, we were working out of a warehouse with, cold storage and meat in the back.
Yeah.
It was like, with my Italian partner, it was like, hey, are you guys mafia or something? It's like, no, we're hard money. And so it's like, we decided, hey, we're just going to lean into it, as you guys say. And really the first person it started with Chris. Chris, was with us in, I think it was 2010. And he, would go to, local real estate, events and things. And, there were a lot of mortgage brokers, and he was trying to differentiate himself. So he's like, hey, I'm hard money Chris.
Mm-hmm.
And then that year for the Christmas party, John gave him a license plate that said Hard Money Chris and then had his phone number on the bottom of it.
That's John Gray.
And Chris put it on his...
I love it. I love it. Well, that's awesome because like, people are afraid to be kind of salesy, I feel like. But like you kind of want that in your loan officers. You want them to be out there hustling hard and grinding and doing what they have to do to get deals done.
Correct.
I don't object to it whatsoever. Like it as long as you're successful and getting the results that you want, is my view on it. But like, you never got the pressure from the market, from the industry professionals to be like, "Oh, we don't call it hard money anymore." You know,
we have. But I think everyone has their way of selling. Some people educate, some people are the ABC. Constantly. I mean, there's just different ways to approach different solutions to the same problem. And I don't. We have folks that don't do the kind of the ABC, always be closing kind of. I mean, it's not like, we have both types. So it's, you can be successful in any realm, however you choose to do your sales process.
Right. Now I got to ask you, where did you guys like learn this sales training these strategies? Because it doesn't come instinctually, does it?
Yeah, you weren't doing this at the bank.
No, we were not doing this at the bank.
Like, did you go to like a sales training or a sales course, or was John like a sales manager in this? Like, where did this mentality come from for your loan officer? Because you have such a unique. There's only a handful of companies that do it this way.
Right, direct retail channel, and we're going to own distribution from start to finish. Yeah,
and it's successful too. So like, I'm just wondering where this came from a mindset standpoint.
It just evolved over time. John, having been a stockbroker in New York.
Yeah, they do it that way. Right?
Yeah, it not quite the way we do it. We do it a little bit different, but
they do a lot of dialing and that kind of stuff. Yeah,
and I had early on in my business career, I had a mentor, and he was really big on dialing. His background was as a financial advisor, but he would do business coaching of all types. And so like, when I worked at the bank, I mean, I would say, okay, you got to make, we had different games I played, you got to make 7 dials before 7 a.m. every day, or you got to make 22, and he would change it every couple weeks. And if I didn't do it, 22 dials by 2 p.m. every day, whatever. He'd make different games up like that. And if I didn't do it, then I would have to tell the president, like, hey, if I don't make these dials, I have to clean the bathroom with a toothbrush. And the president of the bank's like, okay, whatever, man, you're some stupid kid. Get out of here.
Sounds good, buddy.
Yeah, exactly.
These are self-imposed challenges.
These were self-imposed. Yeah. So that was, so it wasn't foreign to me. And then, when John came and joined me, he was rusty on using the telephone, really, actually. And I had used a book. You buy it at Kinko's. It's called Cold Calling Sales Techniques. And so I was like, hey, man, you got to read this. You got to understand what the ledge is and how, cold calling works. And so I gave it to him. He read it, and he just embraced it. I mean, he would just go all in on it. And then every employee after that, got the book. It was just sort of...
That was the culture.
It just sort of like just developed that way. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. And then, and I'd say, our current team, Chris, Karate, Matt, those guys have helped evolve the program. And even, recently, Hard Money Munoz, she, gave us some really good suggestions on how to improve the, the ramp up process.
Yep.
And so it's constantly improving. We have a saying, we're looking always for 1% improvements. If you can just make a 1% improvement over time, that aggregates to, a significant improvement. So how can we improve this process or this system by 1%?
Right. And I mean, 15 years of 1% improvement. I mean, it's
massive.
A lot.
Yeah. If you stagnate, you die. Right. So.
Right. And that's what I find in our space. A lot of folks actually face that trouble is they don't identify where the improvements can be. And then when crisis hits, it really hits because they're now, like right now, we're facing it, right? I mean, this market right now, a lot of our clients capital markets are dead. They don't have discretionary capital. They don't have the deal flow that they need to survive. And they haven't made the improvements in the business to really get there. And I think one of the best things that I've learned today from you is you guys are always working on the business.
Yeah, 100%.
On the business, not in the business, on the business, which is
100%.
fantastic. I mean,
Always.
and is that one of the things that you're on day to day, every day?
Yes, every day I'm working on the business.
That's cool.
And but like get deeper on that, right? Like, what does it mean? Adham Sbeih walks into this office this morning. What is your thought process and your role? I mean, how do you determine how you're going to work on the business?
It depends on the day. So I meet with a lot of people, and I am constantly talking to our team, and I'm constantly looking for things that we can improve, or listening for people with their suggestions of what we could improve, or what is a problem, where is our issue, where are we having, bottlenecks, so it's just it varies day to day. And there are
You're
periods,
kind of like doing like a listening tour to your people. I mean, was this kind of like are you just walking the halls a little bit and kind of walk through the process of that a little bit?
Sure. I am constantly thinking about this. So behind us is our code of honor. So we have a code that we follow. It's we try to be like the Marines. The Marines have a code, right? They say no Marine left behind. We have our own code. It's like keep your commitments. It's develop yourself personally and professionally. There's certain pieces, and we have a way and a process where people are allowed to call people out for doing a good job on meeting that code, right? So I see that, and if I see that, I might grab the person and talk to them about it. Hey, I saw or heard that you
That's really important.
did
That's what makes a
XYZ.
huge difference when the CEO does that,
So there's that piece of it. We're always looking at like, hey, where's our weak spot? Where do we need to put manpower? Where can we add technology? Where is our, communication breakdown? In this office, we have baby boomers, Gen Xers, millennials, and Gen Z. We got 4 generations working in the office. That causes friction.
Yeah.
Right. And then you're thinking, okay, now how do you solve that friction? How do you make this, having 4 generations working in an office can be a huge asset. It can be a massive asset, right?
You have diversity of thought.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so you want to you want to encourage a little bit of the tension, but you don't want it to go, over the top.
You want to challenge each other and make and they push each other to be better. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. That's so foreign to me when I compare to a lot of the interviews I've done with CEOs. They're not thinking that way. I think that's kind of one of the keys to your guys' success, because your hands are working on the business and making sure that things are flowing well and smoothly. You're not obsessing about capital markets. You're not obsessing about deal flow. And that's so different. And what's interesting to me is that also you guys have built your own, I call it the mysterious money machine, right? Your funds are significantly sized. You're at about $500 million under management. And you have been consistently raising money, and a lot of our, I guess you can call it, friends in the space have money with you. And what's fascinating to me is that it's also very under the radar. I go to a commercial show in Las Vegas and talk to a client, and they're like, "Who's that?" "Oh, those guys." They're not, these aren't this big, lights in the sky kind of operation, but you're out competing these guys every day of the week. And I just don't know, how do you put that level of trust in your people to make sure that level of performance is there? Because you have continuously outperformed a lot of your competitors through much of these problematic cycles. Right now, you guys are doing well. COVID, you guys killed it. But as a CEO, that must be really scary.
No, it's not. I've got a really good group of people. I think for me, that's the bottom line. We've got a great executive team. We've got a good group of folks, on our sales team. We got a great group in our, loan servicing team. Super people. Our funding group. We've got a lot of people that have been we've been around 16 years. We've got people that have been with us for more than 10 years. Quite a few people have been with us for more than 10 years. We don't have a lot of turnover. We do everything we can. I do everything I can to take care of the folks that work for us. That's whatever. It's, health benefits and lunches and workouts at the gym, trying to give people some balance to their life. If they have kids and that kind of stuff.
You care about their personal lives and their well-being as well.
Yeah, I do. You become vested in what's best for them. We've had people that we've, paid for them to go to school to, get their MBAs, get trained, and sometimes those people then move on, right? That's kind of part of the, what's the saying? I'd rather train them and have them leave than not and have them stay.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So we incentivize people to grow,
right,
personally and professionally. I mean, that's just part of what we do.
I want to ask you about the funds and stuff, because it's always, there's only a handful of debt funds out there, and as a debt fund person, this is my job. Your debt funds are so strange to me, because the fact of the matter is, I think you're one of the very few larger sized funds that do not use leverage. You do not sell to the secondary.
Correct.
You balance sheet everything.
Right.
And you do deals that you want to, you guys haven't, for a long time, you guys didn't do construction.
Right.
Even when everyone else was. Why?
What's wrong with you?
No, because we talk about this privately, but so many of your competitors, right, have they pursued leverage, they pursued loan sale, they did all.
Well, they pursue growth at all, and they're hyper growth focused. I think most of our clients,
these are all tools to grow, but their mindset is grow,
right.
And they've done all these things, but you've chosen not to. But you've also
you've grown massively, right? That's the interesting thing.
That is weird. For me, I don't want the debt in our funds because I want to be the shot caller. I don't want, a big family office to call up and say, hey, we're going to pull our $30 million out of your fund if you don't do X, Y, Z. So it's been important for me that ultimately the decisions, good or bad, fall on me,
right,
not somebody else. And that's why we've steered clear of that stuff. I do think that, our approach to origination allows us to see a lot more loans so we can make better deals. And we run things at a pretty low cost. So, it passes through to our investors at a higher yield.
Yeah, your expense ratio is non-existent.
Yeah. So I think we do things a little more efficiently. No one wants to do what we do. So, as a result, we can do it for less, so to speak. Other than that, I think we're probably we've been a little bit fortunate. We're disciplined. We work hard. We grind. On
the loan sale side too, right? There were so many opportunities from basically 2017, 18 till 2021 to sell loans off the books and get liquidity.
Right. You could have probably tripled your volume if you wanted to.
Right.
You chose not to.
Yeah.
Correct. Ultimately, it's our investor is who guides us, and selling those loans didn't benefit our investor. It would benefit me, for instance, right?
Your fund's model, it would just go to you. Yeah.
Yes. So ultimately, I think that, played a part in it. I also like a portfolio, portfolioing loans. I think of us as like a national community bank, right? That's, the community banks are dying. Yeah. They are dying at a rate. When I got into banking, there were in Sacramento, gosh, what was it? It was 23 community banks in the Sacramento region.
23.
Today there's 4, and 2 of them are merging. So
they got bought up by different bigger banks.
Yeah.
So
and nationally, the banks have gone, in that same period, they're off about 70% between consolidations and failing. And the prediction is really we're going to end up with about 1,000 banks in the country, period. So it's for me, kind of the market that we as private lenders, hard money lenders that we can serve is really the borrower that used to go to the community bank and get their loan, that now that community bank doesn't exist or isn't making loans. Right. And that's who we service. So, for us, when Dave Herzer approached me about Herzer Financial, it made sense to me because home builders they can't go to their community bank to get a, single family home, construction loan. And that's what Dave has been doing for, 20 years. And so for me, it was okay, let's learn the secret sauce of how, ground up construction works. And this is another way we can service the borrower.
And that raises another interesting topic, because this is what I love about your story. You have been through this past cycle, if you will call it, a lot of trials and tribulations. And one of the bigger trials and tribulations that a lot of private lenders don't get to go through is buying another company, right? They get bought. You grew and you bought another company. And you bought Herzer Financial, and this is recent, and I'm glad you're able to talk about it. Tell us more about like the mentality, not necessarily the actual transaction itself first and why you did it, more like on your end. How did you know you were ready to buy another company, first of all? A lot of private lenders can buy another private lender.
Right. How did I know I was ready? Well, I'll say this. We've wanted to get into the ground up construction business for single family homes for a while.
Yeah, I remember that. You tell me that. Yeah.
We dipped our toe in and stubbed it once or twice.
It's a risky business. Yep.
And so, it had been on my mind for a while that, hey, I'd like to be able to service that piece of the community bank business. And so Dave Herzer, his company, it's amazing. He started, or his dad started it in the 50s. And then Dave,
really?
Yes,
Wow.
Dave took it over. And we're now managing one of his funds. He started it in 04, 03. It's one of the few
survivors.
I'm sorry, it might have been 99. He started it.
That's true. I remember looking at the
and I loved that. Yeah. And when I met with his investors, they were super loyal to Dave because he went through the Great Recession, returning like 3 or 4%, which is amazing.
Right, and they stuck by.
Yeah. And so, for me, when, as we talked about, we call it a merger of the two businesses. We're calling it, it's two organizations, one team. That's how we look at it. When we started talking, it was like, hey, I really want to understand your secret sauce of how you were able to make loans, ground up construction loans through the Great Recession and return 3-4% to your investors. That's awesome. And so that was part of the calculus for me.
So there was a need for it. And did you approach Dave or did Dave approach you?
Dave approached me.
So it was a legacy move for him?
Correct.
He's trying to retire, that kind of stuff?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's smart. Because that's the hardest part about private lending is that there is not really an exit. You either stick with it and retire and just kind of walk away from the business, or you try to sell it, but it's not that easy, right? So that's okay.
And I think that's also one of your secret sauces, kind of just being a casual observer of your organization, which is that you've gone through a lot of iterations of ownership and management and just kind of thinking through the business of, it's first you and John, right? And you've really been a thoughtful person every time I've spoken to you about how do I make sure that there's a next generation that sits right behind me, and how do I incentivize them, and how do I make sure I reward them? Walk us through that. Did you know this going in? Where did you learn it? How did you implement it?
I'm
talk
still
us through
learning
this.
it, Nema.
Yeah.
I think, in our business, actually Dave is one that's coined it. You got the tiger by the tail, right? We've got $500 million in capital. We have to do what is best for our investors, and so there's got to be some kind of succession plan. For me, that's part of the young folks that we hire. Some of them are a part of that succession plan. I don't want to have a succession plan with a bunch of 55-year-olds, right? It's got to be people that are in their,
So is there like a program that you instituted for like your high performers to become partners in the business?
Correct.
Okay. They're able to buy in, that kind of stuff?
It's I can't get into the details of all those pieces, but yeah, if you are a high performer, you can have an opportunity to become a part
of the business. That's cool.
When did you start thinking about that? Like, when did you start going, this can't be just about me?
It really hit me hard after John passed away. So he died in July of 2020. It was sudden.
Yeah, it was really sudden.
So it was unexpected. And then all of a sudden you realize, okay, if the same thing happens to me, we're in deep trouble.
Yeah.
And so that was really where it started. And it took me a solid 9 months to really kind of, figure out how I wanted to do it and with who and how and what, that kind of thing. And I'm glad I did. It just, the business needs to be greater than me. And
that's the best way to put it.
And that's part of that.
And we've seen that struggle. We've seen a lot of people, currently, at this juncture, we've been going to see, California Mortgage Association and, since 2011 or so, and you're watching kind of this aging out type thing, and you can watch in real time, people, when they start falling off, their business starts falling off. There just isn't a plan for continuation. And it's interesting to see you kind of just jump in front of that the way you have.
Yeah. It's a challenge. I mean, I'm sure you guys are facing similar challenges. At the
we
law
haven't
firm.
solved it either. And I deal with key man policies and provisions for clients all the time. And there's no kind of, silver bullet for it either, because every business is different. I want to switch gears a little bit.
Sure.
I want to ask you some questions about Adam. So you have a very interesting hobby. You train dogs, correct?
Yeah.
Not just any kind of dogs. Okay, full disclosure. Our mutual friend Guido, who was on the show before, gave us some questions to ask you.
Oh, he did? Oh, no. Okay, all right.
And I also want to say this is payback for an interview you did circa during the pandemic, in which you asked Adam questions that he would like to ask about us.
That's true.
So
That's
it's
true.
finally coming full circle.
So tell us more about this hobby. This is one of the most interesting hobbies I've ever heard. So first of all, what kind of dogs are we training?
Belgian Malinois.
Wow.
So yeah,
so these are the dogs that militaries use, aren't they?
Yeah, military and police, right? Yeah, they're super smart dogs, and they can. Oh gosh, they can do all kinds of things. Yeah, there's YouTube video. I mean, I've made a YouTube video, but yeah, there's all sorts of videos online.
So you're a trainer of these dogs.
Yeah, I'm an amateur trainer. That's what I would say. Yeah.
How did this start? I don't understand. How does one start thinking about? I have a lot of hobbies,
right?
But I never ever thought about training an animal.
Right.
I can barely get my kids to do anything.
Right.
How did you?
Very similar skill set.
Yeah, right.
How did you start this hobby? It's just interesting.
Oh gosh, I don't even know where to begin. Let's see. I lived in a house where I couldn't have a dog for a long time, and I said to my girlfriend, I want to be, I can't believe, we've, all this time and I don't have a pinball machine. I don't have a dog
right,
I want. I don't, I don't have a pool, whatever. I was just,
my mom is mad at me.
Yeah, exactly. So then she's like, oh, great. I wanted to get a new house. Right. So I was like, okay. So we got a new house. So it was a single story house, big house, all windows. And then she didn't feel safe in that house. And she's not strong. She couldn't fire a gun. We don't own a gun, or I do now, but I didn't then. And she's like, I want something to protect me. So it was like,
okay.
And she actually was the one who encouraged me to get into the training the Belgian Malinois.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So you bought one to raise for your own.
I bought one to raise. I bought one that was. We imported him from Holland. He was some Blackwater guys, the paramilitary group. They had him. They were out in Texas. I bought him off of them, and then we trained him quite a bit. And got
Blackwater, like Iraq Blackwater?
Yeah. The PMC.
Yeah. Incredible.
So
where are you going to get these dogs? It's most likely going to be military sources.
Yeah. I mean, these guys were, the real deal. So then we trained him. There's a training center here locally that does a lot of police dogs. So I took him over. I took my dog over there, and we worked with him. He knows maybe 80, 90 commands, all sorts of different things. We bred him. We've had puppies.
Did you take a class on this?
I did a bunch of seminars.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean,
Adam walks into a room and tells dogs some data. That's not how this works, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting group too, because it's you go to those things where it's like people have these trained kind of military / police dogs, but they're not they're maybe kind of paramilitary. Mm-hmm. They're not they're out of the military by now, and those people all have crazy stories about stuff that happens to them, and it's almost like it's self-fulfilling prophecy sort of stuff, home invasions and all sorts of things, which I've never had, thank God. But yeah, it's an interesting crowd is what I'd say. But yeah, I've spent many weekends working with my dog, training him to do different things.
Have you trained other dogs before?
A little bit.
Okay.
A little bit. Yeah.
We wants to know whether you've taken one on a collections case before with you.
Yes,
You're a little bit late this month for payment.
I did. You know what? I did this is funny. I went into, the really rough part of Oakland. I used to bring the dog to work every day. just because I was part of his training. And the people here loved him.
Right.
And so I had to go down to Oakland. I was doing a site visit it was a rough property. And we were unsure of whether or not we wanted to make the loan. And so I took the dog, and there was it was like a Mexican restaurant and then like 5 or 6 apartments up above that were all, these were low income, kind of on maybe MacArthur. I can't remember, on a pretty rough street. Anyway, so I brought the dog, walked into the restaurant, dressed with, a tie and well dressed with a dog, and everyone just goes running out.
Hey, it's effective.
It worked. It worked. I was just there for a site visit.
It worked.
We didn't make the loan.
We got your answer. There you go. All right. That's I love it. I love it. It's awesome. I love it. And also beyond that, like there's you've also had, beyond the cycling and the dog training. I remember a long time ago reading, when I first read your online profile, you were also involved in Toastmasters, correct?
I was involved in Toastmasters. Oh gosh, I was involved in Toastmasters for about 18 years.
18 years.
Something like that, yeah.
The Sacramento chapter?
In the Sacramento chapter, I won a bunch of speaking contests and things like that. It was really helpful. So when I first got into banking, I had no clue about anything. So I'd been a bike racer. Prior to bike racing, I'd gotten a degree in PE from Sac State. So I'm not like a,
So you don't have no finance, no business.
No finance, no business
Physical
background.
education.
I was a PE major.
Ultimate imposter. Go on.
That's awesome.
Yeah. That's why my mom wanted me to be a plumber. Sorry, Mom.
But that's so cool, though. So, like, the bank tell you to go in Toastmasters?
No. So I had the business mentor, business coach, and he would have me do different things, right? So one of them was, hey, make this one time. He said, okay, I want you to make, it was 10 dials before 6 a.m. every day. So he wanted me to target some people, commercial real estate owners. He said, okay, call these 10 people before 6 a.m., leave them a message. Then 4 days later, send them an article, mail it to them. Then a week later, call them at like 10 p.m., leave a message. And it was this whole process, right? Yeah. So then the final step was like call them during business hours and go, hey, it's Adham Sbeih with XYZ Bank and wanted to set up an appointment with you. And so I did that, and I got my first kind of belly to belly with a guy. And I went into his office, and he put me in the conference room. It was an all-glass conference room. And I noticed these people in the office, like looking around the corner, and they'd point and giggle and then disappear. And it went on for like 10, 15 minutes. All these people kind of peering at me, from behind the corner. So I got up and I went up to the secretary and I said, hey, why is everybody, like looking at me so weird? And she goes, well, I really shouldn't tell you this, but you left a message early in the morning one day, and the message had 37 ums on it. And the owner played it on the intercom for everybody to hear. And so I was like, holy moly. Obviously, I was embarrassed. And so I went back into the conference room and waited, and he finally did show up, maybe 30 minutes later. And he said, hey, at one point I was just a simple contractor down in Santa Monica, and I didn't know how to speak or talk in the business world either. And I went to Toastmasters, and I'd suggest you do the same.
Oh, okay.
And then he got up and left.
And you did that for 18 years after that?
I did it for 18 years, yeah.
Wow. That's fantastic. I have taken some seminars through the Toastmasters group before, and it is the best thing that someone can do to learn how to speak publicly, because they will not let you. They are ruthless. The ums, the likes, those things, those gap fillers. Oh my goodness. You will fix it right there. It's an amazing program. There's only one other person that I've met in our industry that's done Toastmasters. It's one of the ladies over at Precision Capital in Oregon. She's was the chapter head up in where they are. And she was saying the same thing, kind of similar story. Like she got into it to be able to basically sell.
Right.
learn how to sell. So that's a really, really cool story. Thank you for sharing that. That's really cool.
Sure. We send a lot of our folks to Toastmasters.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Okay.
When you start, we've got 2 people right now in Toastmasters.
That's fantastic. Well, I think we're running out of time for the episode. So you know what? I want to thank you, Adam, for letting us come to your wonderful office.
Yes.
Don't do this very often. I'm so happy we did.
Yes.
And getting to interview a client like you is just one of my joys in life and joys of working at Jurassic. So thank you so much for doing this.
Yes. Thank you, Adam.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Kevin.
You've been listening to Lender Lounge with Kevin Kim, brought to you by Jurassic LLP, the nation's largest private lending law firm. Jurassic is the leading legal resource for specialty lenders, asset-based lenders, private lenders, and non-bank institutions. Learn more about the firm at jurassiclawfirm.com. That's GERACI lawfirm.com. Check out our episode summary to subscribe to our Lender Lounge newsletter and our law firm newsletter, where you can get notified about new episodes and recent content directly from our expert attorneys. In addition, we'd love if you follow Lender Lounge with Kevin Kim on YouTube, your favorite podcast platform, and on LinkedIn, where you can also check out updates from Jurassic LLP. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on Lender Lounge with Kevin Kim. This is Kevin Kim, signing off.